please welcome the Director of the George W. Bush Institute-SMU Economic Growth Initiative, Laura Collins.
Good morning. The Bush Institute-SMU Economic Growth Initiative advances policies that promote domestic economic growth and strengthen our role in the global economy. Our programs examine the role of trade and globalization in strengthening us globally, and we believe immigration makes us a stronger domestic economy. We're working with Central Americans to help them enhance their own economic opportunity at home, and we're developing a program that will examine policies to further strengthen our domestic economy. Our work often focuses on what the public sector should or should not do. But today, we're going to talk about how the private sector can take the lead in struggling communities. One such leader is Dan Gilbert. Dan is the founder and chairman of Detroit-based Quicken Loans and Rock Ventures. He believes that for a company to be great, it must do good. This philosophy for more than profit motivated him to move his businesses from the suburbs to downtown Detroit. Nearly a decade has passed since that move. He has invested billions of dollars in Detroit and has reignited the heart of the city. Please join me in welcoming Dan Gilbert. Thank you for being here with us today.
Oh, great to be in Texas. It's been a while.
Yeah?
It's always fun when you land here.
Yes. I want to get to what work you've done in Detroit, but first, I want to talk about what for more than profit means and where that philosophy comes from for you.
Well, for more than profit is sort of made-up brand that we put together in the last maybe year or 18 months. And so you have, for-profits, you have non-for-profits. And I think, unfortunately, from Hollywood and certain businesses and certain political circles, the people get slotted and organizations get slotted. Either you're good or you're bad type of thing, and it's unfortunate because there's a lot of good that's being done in the private sector. And so we thought that maybe, based on what we've done in the past and how we look at things, to come up with a term that maybe communicated it better. And the term is for more than profit. So we're what we call ourselves anyway, for more than profit. And that doesn't mean, and this is the thing you got to watch out, because the boards of public companies and CEOs, they go, what do you mean, for more than? So it actually means more profits as well. And the concept there is that you have a talent attraction because of a mission. And let's face it, today, I know it's a little bit cliche to say all this, but it really is the sort of the calling card of every CEO in America: talent, talent, talent. Mm-hmm. And today's talent, I think it's pretty much in every survey and every observable metric, they want to be part of something that is helpful, not just to the profits of the company, which is fine, but to the community in some kind of mission base. And our mission was Detroit, and it fit in perfect, and I think that it feeds in each other. And I think, I don't know mathematically if we can prove it, although I'd like to hire a university to go do some kind of study, but I believe that we are actually literally more profitable on a P&L standpoint because we have a mission above and beyond our profits attracting the best and brightest to Detroit.
Has this been a philosophy that has been with you from the beginning? You're a serial entrepreneur. You started businesses basically your whole life. Mm-hmm. Have you thought this from the beginning, or is this something that developed for you over time?
I didn't think exactly of this thing till we got downtown to Detroit and started really viewing the world through a different lens, a little bit of a different lens. I mean, I'm a fourth-generation Detroiter. My kids are fifth. We're like Detroit farmers, as I like to say. And I used to kid people, going west was going to East Lansing. That was going, Mom, I'm going to East Lansing. You're going that far west. And so I mean, it's something, though, that, when I watch some of the media and the movies, and, there's always this depiction of the, greedy, evil corporations and crazy. But, yeah, there's a handful of those in the world, in our country, but most of them, I think, are run by good people. People have noble purposes, and I think they do impact things positively. So we were saying, how can we package this, and then also maybe step it up so companies could see that it's not just great for the community, which could be in itself a reason, but it literally, in today's world, it's like this opening almost. Like in today's world, it's going to make your company better too, and that really hit it for us in the last 5-6 years.
So this move to downtown, talk to me about the process you had for making the decision. You were based in the suburbs, you'd been there a while. things are obviously going well for you at this point. Why make the move to downtown?
Well, there's a couple of reasons. I mean, number one, it's sort of what I was saying earlier. There's this sort of philanthropic part of it or altruistic part of it, and then there's a sort of capitalistic reason. So I'll give you the first one on the philanthropic side. So we're from Detroit, our families, I just told you, and most of my friends were and all that. And you heard for years, you probably had to be about 6, 7 years, 8 years older than me to have a memory of what all of us heard growing up there from our parents, our grandparents, our aunts, our uncles, the Detroit that they remember. And they just talked about it with like passion and heart, and people who were in the city talked about it that way, and people in the suburbs talked about it that way. And let's face it, 50 to 60 year decline in a major American city, it was a well-deserved reputation.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't, I never try to like tell people or sugarcoat it saying, it was exaggerated and this and that. It wasn't exaggerated, it was deserved.
Yeah. For
many reasons. We could stay here probably and teach a course about it for hours or 20 hours or 50 hours, whatever it might be, because it's deep and it's detailed and there's a lot of reasons. But, now it was time to go out and to say, how can we impact it? And I felt we had enough employees or team members, as we call them, and, how can we get everybody involved? If we're going to move downtown to Detroit because we're in the suburbs, our leases were coming due, it was, all right, I'm not going to go down there and where everybody's going to drive in, go to a garage, 6 o'clock, get back in the car, drive to the suburbs. We might as well stay in the suburbs,
sure,
right? So
yeah.
we have to have this, like, let's impact as much as we can. Now, we had no idea sort of the opportunities to do that and how they were going to happen and all that. But yeah, philosophically, from when we moved, that was the thought process, without a name and without knowing how much.
Yeah, great. Talk about what you've accomplished so far downtown, because I think we all, as you mentioned, we all know the struggles Detroit has had. There are iconic images. We understand the blight, the removal, population loss from the heart of the city. What have you been able to accomplish simply with that first move in the decade since?
First of all, there's a name that we say in Detroit. I don't hear this name much anymore because you were talking about the symbols of decay. And I'm not sure that name got out to here, but we used to call it ruin porn, like RUIN porn, like that, because people would come from all over the world literally and take pictures of these ruins and then, and put them. Now most of that's pretty much gone, okay?
Yeah.
Including Ford Motor Company, which just committed to the train station, which was one of the big symbols of decay, which was just a fantastic thing. And
it's a beautiful building. I mean,
beautiful. It's like Grand Central Station, New York. And that was a symbol. So having Ford, coming up and committing, that was just a beautiful thing to see. But I would say, for us, the most important thing is that we prove to everybody that it's safe, which it is, and that that we would be able to, through many mechanisms, and you can go through. There's employment, which was an issue, with jobs. Blight, which I chaired the Blight Task Force, and the mayor's done a great job with that. There's the safety, which you could probably put that in the #1 position. Then of course there's education, which is the last one. But all 4 of those are going in the right direction right now.
So of those 4, some of those are things that we typically think the public sector has a role in shaping. How have you in the private sector, have you taken on any of these roles in sort of helping the city get on its feet by taking some of those roles, at least temporarily, before the city government can take them on full?
It's a great question, and there's nothing like the largest municipal bankruptcy in the history of the world to give everybody religion and start to look at each other and say, hey, maybe we should be in the same boat rowing together. Detroit was infamous for divisions of all kinds. It's sort of like symbolic, I guess, if you're looking at America's conflicts kind of on steroids, So you had race relation issues, you had union management issues, you had east side, west side, you had suburban versus the city. It goes, on and on and on, and people they tend to live in very ethnic, areas. And so that's just a huge challenge, but like I said, when you have a bankruptcy, which was the next day, people started calling. Like, people knew that was the bottom. Like, what worse can happen? The city went bankrupt. So people started calling. To me, I really, and that's what I started off saying with the for more than profit, balancing this profit motive with also, the mission motive, and understanding they're not in conflict, that they work together. And once that strategy and philosophy started kicking in, we have 17,000 full-time people downtown Detroit now, and we're attracting, that's our people, or not in all that.
Yeah.
Make sure I clarify that. But we're attracting them from Yale, Harvard, Brown, I mean, you name it, Stanford, and because they're attracted, and the generation, I don't know how old you are exactly, but the generation look pretty young to me. But
Thank you. I'm a millennial. We'll get to that later.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Well, I had a 44-year-old tell me the other day they were a millennial or something. I go, I don't know.
I believe that.
If I do the
I'm
math.
right on the cusp of the edge, and I think 44 is probably too old. But
it's one of those letter Y, Z, X, or is it, I don't know, baby boomer? I don't know. so I don't know what I was saying now.
We were talking about, you were talking about the bankruptcy giving everyone religion, and also the role that you have taken on.
Yes.
Are there things that the public sector wasn't able to, for lack of a better term, pick up and do on its own, and that you filled that void for them while they get it together?
And it's some of it is capital, and some of it is flat out contributions to the right groups doing the right things, but a lot of it has nothing to do with it. It has to do with a high employee or motivated workforce to do things. I'll give you one example of that since you asked the question. So Detroit Public Schools, after the bankruptcy of the city, which is actually a separate entity than the schools there, they had 50 or 60 years of diplomas in cabinets, paper diplomas. So let's put aside the people who don't graduate. Let's talk about everyone who graduated since 1950 whose employer still wants to verify they graduated high school.
Yeah.
After the bankruptcy, Detroit they would forget it. You walked in a room probably double the size of this with cabinets. It's almost like out of a movie. You couldn't believe it. And so we wrote a program for them. To scan in every single one of these diplomas since 1950. And we took 300 of our people volunteered every week for 9 months. That's how long it took. And went in there, 300 people a week, at probably 5 hours a day, and just to scan this stuff. And now, 9 months, now we have a whole digital system. Now, people would say, if you're the pure sort of spreadsheet person, well, geez, you wasted all that money you had to pay for your people to do. First of all, those people, our team, they figure out how to do their work and get it done. Okay, it gets done. So I don't buy into that one-to-one type of thing. And secondly, the morale and what you get for that, the feeling that, and at that time, I was probably maybe, 5,000 to 6,000 people over the course of those 9 months were involved in it. You just can't, it's invaluable. You can't even measure it. It's so important, and makes them love what they're doing better, love their company, love their community, get more involved, and it just sort of feeds in itself.
Well, and it's such a huge help to the community. Anyone who's sat in line at the DMV to renew a driver's license, or if you've gotten married and changed your name and had to go to the Social Security office, those are frustrating events. If it's very frustrating just to get your high school diploma or your transcript that you need for enrolling in college, getting a job, any of those things, that's a huge boost to anyone that's just trying to make their life better.
No question. And the point is that employers who have a lot of people, and you don't even need a lot, let me back off that a little bit. If you have 50 people, 70 people, 100 people, 500, it doesn't really matter. There are projects galore that you just pick one off and have them, so you're lending them to a community or an organization or the city, and it's going to do the opposite. It's going to attract better people, better talent from all over. I'll give you one more. We created this thing called a winternship, okay? A winternship. That's 3 weeks in January. Now, I just learned this because I didn't go to Ivy League schools. They wouldn't look at me, right? So, but I guess the Ivy League schools they don't go back from Christmas to like Groundhog's Day or something, okay? So, which is February 2nd, biggest holiday, second biggest holiday in Detroit outside of Christmas. And so we, just this January, because I met with all these folks, we had 18 kids, I call them kids, I'm sorry, but college from Harvard, Brown, and Yale, and there were like, I've got to get the number right, something like 80 applicants. Now, if I would have told you 5 years ago, 7 years ago, even 3 years ago, that we're going to have 3 weeks of folks from Ivy League schools do a winternship in the middle of January in downtown Detroit, you would have put me away in some kind of place. Literally, that's how. It
doesn't sound very pleasant to be in downtown Detroit in the middle of winter, right?
But that's my point. We got them to do it, and it's the second or third year, and because they get so much out of participating and doing it, and now we've got a shot at them when they graduate. So there's another benefit for the profit-making side. They work together, and that's the key thing. And I think the rhetoric sometimes that goes on before this latest, stuff in America, even before that was, evil, greedy, capitalist corporation and the rest of the do-gooders. And the reality of that is not true. And I think though both sides can do things to work together that help both sides.
I want to go back to this. You talked about the buy-in from your employees to do this project with the transcripts. Talk to me about the culture that you have instilled in your companies and how that motivates your employees to go out and do more.
So our flagship business is Quicken Loans, and Texas is a great state for us, I want you to know. So we are now America's largest residential lender. We passed up Wells Fargo, JP Morgan, all that in the last year. And we're in a commodity business. So a commodity business, a mortgage is a mortgage. One doesn't come with air conditioning and the other without it, right? I mean, it's the same. It's almost the ultimate commodity. And pricing in the mortgage business, or we call it interest rate, closing costs, whatever you want to call it, pretty close for certain credit grade, the good credit grades, close. Now, if that's the case, out of 30,000 lenders and brokers, and this isn't to brag here, but it's the reason, because it comes back to culture. How do you emerge and pass up all 29,000 plus other lenders when you don't have a product that's proprietary in any way, and your pricing is competitive, but you're not out there like Walmart or the lowest price ever? That's not our deal, and it's hard to do in any business, let alone a commodity business. So the reason is our culture, which we reflect in these little books we're giving away, I think, on the way out today. Normally $19.99 plus shipping and handling, but not here. Get it free, okay? So it's these 19 cutesy little sayings that drive our culture that we put in place many years ago, and that we don't just talk the talk, we truly walk the walk on these things. And what it does is give our people a definition of who we are. That's what a culture is to me, not what you do, who you are. And it drives four things. It's a compass for them to drive decision-making, prioritization, actions, and behaviors. Because without it, everybody runs into something called 24 hours. So you can muscle out a business, muscle it out, and then it gets away from you. So, why do entrepreneurs hit this ceiling most of the time? This worked for them from 0 to 30. It worked, and all of a sudden, boom. That's because, the things that got them from here to here, very different than the things that get them from here to here. And sometimes being in the fishbowl, you don't sort of know that. Somebody's got to tell you. But so what this does here, this philosophy, it's sort of these well thought out definitions of who we are, so they know which path. I'm not going to be right 100% of the time. Like if something goes wrong, I generally don't call somebody up and say, hey, hey Bob. Or let me use millennial names. Hey Brooke. Hey Matthew. Or Josh, or whatever it is. I say, I know who you believe it. You do believe it. So one of ours is, obsessed with finding a better way, or the inches we need. And I go, yeah, no, I do believe it. I go, so this decision you made, or what? And then this sort of clicks in. It's one thing to have this and to put it out if you're an organization. It's another thing to get them to see through that lens. Like people can recite things in memory. They can have a good memory on things and all that, but they can't, necessarily see through it until it's got to come from the leadership all across.
Do you feel like this culture that you've instilled in your company has, you've obviously led in downtown, more businesses have joined you. Do you feel like this culture is starting to seep into the rest of the community in Detroit? And it is sort of a culture of entrepreneurship and a culture of success.
Started off that way. Detroit was the Silicon Valley of its day, right? Back in the, car companies that were emerging. People forget that General Motors was a merger of many little auto companies, I guess. I don't know the exact number. Then it got down to 4, then it got down to 3. But then I think there were a period of 70 years, whatever you want to call it, where it became only a sort of, you graduate high school, you go to work in the factory, you get a pension, things go well, overtime, you get a house up north, second home. It's not for everybody, of course, but I think the entrepreneurial sort of spirit went away. You had these big companies, right? And then there were some supplier companies that were entrepreneurial to the auto companies, but I think now things have really turned. I mean, we just had our first unicorn in Detroit that was started 3 years ago, a company called StockX, which is the stock market of things. We got 600 people. started in downtown Detroit 36 months ago. That's just on a trajectory. Again, one of those kinds of things 3, 5, 7 years ago, you say that can't happen there. It can only happen in Silicon Valley or Boston or wherever. But there's nothing indigenous to the land for technology. Right?
Yeah.
It's about people and talent, which is why I go back to the original thing for your first question. Well, how do you get the best talent? Well, this talent today is attracted to some kind of mission-based initiative.
Yeah. Do you feel like you have two contributions really as a private sector actor here? You have the actual financial investments that you've made, and then you do have this, changing of the mindset, changing the culture. Which do you think is more impactful?
Wait, what was the first one again?
Financial investment and then the cultural investment. Which is more impactful?
That's a great question. I don't know if you could do one without the other, although I think if you put, I guess I can say it here, you put a gun to my head, okay? You could, and I had to make a decision, you would say culturally, right? Mm-hmm. Culturally is because money without culture, without purpose, or without a noble sort of stated crystal clear mission, whatever it is that you want to do, and as long as it's a good thing for the world and the community, and not having an expectation back right away. Like we try to support things that aren't, not political. Either doesn't matter. We support things that are going to make a difference and impact the community. It's amazing. It's like magic. It's like literally watching magic occur of how people, and I try to hire a lot of younger people as well as people who are advanced in age. I don't mean advanced like advanced, but I'm saying, not all millennials, okay? But
you can hire all millennials. I'll help you with that.
But I'm saying it's truly remarkable when you sort of free people of the shackles of corporate. It was broke for a long time, and it still is in a lot of areas. It's, the bureaucracy is now.
But you've unleashed your creativity.
You unleash creativity, ideas. You let people. I think when you look at that, what's that pyramid called? The
Maslow's hierarchy.
Yeah. I think when you take away all the sort of the things that you need, air and food and drink, I think the mattering, people knowing that what they're doing is impacting others is right there and below all that stuff, and it's the next level. And I think I see it every day.
We've talked a lot about successes, so now we're going to talk about places where it's not been as easy or places that have failed. Mm-hmm. Where have you found the challenges to be, and what are the lessons that you've learned in that process?
Well, if you try to run an NBA team, you're going to remember 3.3.
I didn't mention this, but for those of you who don't know, you own the Cleveland Cavaliers.
Yeah, now this year is probably not a great year to admit that, but last 4 years.
We live in Dallas, the Mavs didn't do that well. So.
Well, I'll tell you what, that kid you got is special.
Yeah.
Is special. You know what I'm talking about.
Dirk.
Well, Dirk retired. Okay. So just yesterday, right? Last night. When you're in professional sports, it's completely different. I think the president knows that.
With baseball, yes.
With baseball.
Yes.
You have one out of, let's put it this way, 97% of all the teams are going to fail at the end of the year, right?
Yeah.
If you're judging it by who's the champion. So that, 3.3%, at least in our league, 30 teams. And usually, if you're an entrepreneur or if you're running a community organization or part of a government, usually you walk in the morning, you got like 50, 100, 200, 500 levers you can pull on. Well, when you're in the NBA type of thing or professional, you can draft for better talent. That's one day a year. And you got to be pretty good at doing it, sometimes get lucky at it. You can have free agency and that's a hire, but sign free agents. That's about 5 days in the summer. And then you can trade. Well, a team has to want to trade with you. They got to both, you both agree to that. So you can't, when things are going bad, you can't walk in and have all these things you can do. So you are stuck with, what you have for a period of time, and it's a longer term. And that goes against, I think, what entrepreneurs, how they roll, right? Mm-hmm. So there's a conflict, and usually whether it's Mark Cuban or myself or others, you go through this period where you get killed for a while until you learn what's going on, and you do stupid things like I did, many of them, and then you finally start to understand and get it, and hopefully be competitive after that.
So are there specific lessons you learned from moving your companies downtown, buy-in from the community or working with the government, the local government?
Yeah, well, the government here, the mayor of Detroit, which I think is one of the most undertold stories. And I remember, again, I'm trying to not get any of the political stuff, but whether you were on the left or the right, when you saw an African-American win the presidency, there was some, I think most people were saying that's, in America, whether you agreed or voted for, it doesn't matter. I'm just saying is in America. Now in Detroit, which people don't know, a white man won an election on a write-in ballot against a formidable African-American candidate with an 85% African-American population. I thought that was, again, whether or not people liked him, didn't, to me that was like, those two things to me stand and say, America's still, we're in a pretty good place when it comes to that. People care about the same things, and there's common ground where people can get together. We have examples of that, right? And so the mayor of Detroit, and by the way, there was he had to do it on a write-in candidate standpoint because he missed a deadline on the signatures, and then they ran another Mike Duggan against him, who was a barber. So you had to choose Michael Duggan or Mike Duggan, and you had to remember which one to write it in. I mean,
that's not the first time that's happened. There are other races across the country where that happens. That's politics.
It's crazy. But he won, and he is so loved, I think, he won the last election, but I think it was close to 70%. I mean, he is, you have to have, but you can't have a strong private sector that wants to get involved and do partnerships in a bad public sector, or the reverse. You need both. I mean, both sides have got to swim together. And in Detroit, we have the foundations also in that. We have the community groups. We're one of the most diverse cities in America. There's people from everywhere, age, color, creed, everywhere. And it's just an exciting place to be.
Do you feel that you have you've obviously led in Detroit. Do you see that this is changing in other cities that have struggled in the U.S.? Are there other companies that are taking the model that you have and leading in their communities in the same way?
Yeah, you do see that, and you see it both from people who are leaders of the cities, whether private or public sector, but you also see it in the venture capital. Like Steve Case, I'm not sure if you know, so he was one of the founders of AOL, long-term CEO. He started this fund called Rise of the Rest, and his concept is that, besides the coast, he wants to invest in technology companies, the rest, quote unquote. And they've had some great successes, and he's recruited a lot of folks who are successful entrepreneurs in technology to put their own money into the fund. And again, that's another example, in my opinion, of where capitalism and mission can just work together. And so you see some success in Cleveland, and Detroit, and Pittsburgh, Indianapolis, and there's more than that. And it's surprising because I see a lot of the deals I invested into his fund, and we talk a lot, and it's remarkable how smart and how entrepreneurial various places and pockets are in the country. You never expect I think there's a rocket company in Traverse City, Michigan. I know there's a rocket people here, I think. And of course we're now, Rocket Mortgage, which is another thing. But Traverse City, Michigan, I guess in North, it's in the, I don't know if you guys know this, we started to do the Lower Peninsula, like your mitten.
The mitten, yeah.
So it'd be like over here. And it's pretty successful from what I understand. And you hear, that's not the only example of this kind of thing, but again, technology is not indigenous to the land, and we have to keep reminding everybody of that.
You've hit on this a couple times now about technology and the knowledge economy, and it's about people rather than resources on the ground. That's one of the things that we look at in economic growth because of the fundamental shift in what our economy has done over the last 20 years. Do you feel, this is, I think, a pressure point. A lot of people feel like the knowledge economy has left too many people behind, that there's lack of resilience. Do you feel optimistic about the way this is going?
I do, and I'll give you a few reasons why I do. First of all, let's just say we're back in the economy 1.0. Now, I'm in Detroit, and I want to raise money to make something, which we're doing still, and we're trying to bring in a lot of that back, but make it with the technology slant, technology piece of that. So a plant, from the time you conceive it, okay, I need to build a plant from scratch, what is that? 200 million, 300 million, 500 million, you can pick your number depending on the size. And how many years is it before something's rolling off? 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. Good stuff, good long-term investment. In the digital economy, as I told you earlier, so there was an idea 36 months ago about allowing people to trade sneakers or trade watches or trade, when I say trade, I mean buy and sell, like the stock market. And now it's 3 years later, and we have 600 people, and we have $1 billion plus valuation. That just doesn't happen in that. And so the speed of the game, allows, look, if you're in the city rebuilding business anywhere in the world or anywhere in America, what a great time to be alive, because you got ways and levers again that, man, you can do it faster and with less capital, or spread out that capital, and you don't need that 100% success rate necessarily in the businesses. So I do think that there's a problem in America about, I just read some numbers lately, because all the tech gets all the sort of the glory, and they're the rock stars and all this, but almost like rock stars. You see so much, but people think entrepreneurism or entrepreneurialism, depending on, you can go to dictionary.com.
Yes, you can.
But you see it's deep, and it's deep in technology, but the other places, the other parts of the economy, we have less. I think there's less business startups in the last couple of years on a certain run rate than the last 30 years or something. People are shocked when they hear that. They go, what do you mean? I thought that's the thing today. There's a lot of media around technology, but we need more encouragement, more, I guess, in the public schools. I think also, I don't think there's anything taught in, I mean,
we are less entrepreneurial. I mean, we know this. Yeah. The native-born population doesn't create businesses at the same rate that the immigrant population does. We do have a slower small business formation rate, and small businesses are where jobs are really started and created, and that is a growth engine for our economy.
Yeah, but now that you're an academic and these groups, now for sure I know it's true. Okay, so because I just sort of go off the cuff and I say these things, but I got credibility now. But I really think that that's something that both sides, again, political parties, should be promoting in a big way. What is better than job and wealth creation out of nothing? It's what built our country in the last 250 plus years. I heard Warren Buffett say something that I thought was incredibly interesting, and he said that he's really, really optimistic about the next 100 years in America. And you say, like, why is that? And he says, well, look what we did with using maybe 30% of the brain power of the population. Yeah. So women, minorities weren't given the same kind of opportunities and access and all that today exists.
The gap's closing. Yeah.
The gap is closing. There's ways to go, but it's closing. He says when we get up to 100%, or we're going to have 100% of at least access or opportunity, man, what happens with this country? So I thought that was a great point.
I want to go back. You said something about the speed of the game, and one of the reasons in researching you, one of the reasons that one of the stories told about why you moved downtown is you were interviewing a millennial candidate who was like, I can't imagine being out here amongst highways and concrete and not having anywhere to walk. As I mentioned, I'm a millennial. One of the things that drives me absolutely crazy is when I go to events or panels or discussions and someone is saying, we really need to figure out how to attract millennials. Okay. I'm 36. I've been in the workforce for more than a decade. If you're just now thinking about how to attract millennials, you're way behind. Yeah. and that to me, you've been thinking about that for a while. And I'm concerned that there are big businesses that are behind the ball on this, that they are not doing what they need to do and keeping up with the current generations to adapt.
Yeah, that's good news if you're an entrepreneur or I'll use your language, or not your, my kids are like late teens, early 20s. They use this concept, are you woke to that, okay? Or they use other words too.
Yeah.
So it is so 100% accurate what you're talking about, and I do get concerned sometimes when I have meetings with CEOs of large companies, public companies, where we're talking about some kind of joint venture or something, some partnership, and this comes up, and I think they're starting to become more and more aware of it. But the story that you did your research, the story that you're telling is a true story. So you asked a few minutes back, why did we move downtown? Well, in the self-interest part was the following: is that we were sort of one of the only, not only, but one of the handful, I guess we call like a cool, company in the Detroit area that we told ourselves that story. And when we go to University of Michigan, Michigan State, Wayne State, and others, we were like, we were the princess at the ball kind of thing. They all of a sudden we started noticing in 2000, it must have been 8, 9, 10, 7, in there, the last half of that decade that I think is still unnamed, so I can't refer to it. But it's like, we're losing people. They're going to Chicago. I go, what happened with that kid? I thought you liked it. Well, he's going to Chicago. He's going to New York. And so I said, they lost this kid they thought was going to be a superstar, 22-year-old, University of Michigan, computer engineering graduate, and we thought we had him. So I said, have him come in, I want to talk to him. So he comes in, and we were at the time in a suburban office, 4 stories, and when you look out our window, if you want to talk about a sea of asphalt and parking, it was like February or something. So I come in, again, I think it was, I don't remember his name, so it's either Josh or Matthew, okay? So I said, let's say, call him Matthew. So I say, hey Matthew, so what happened? I know you're not taking our offer. He goes, well, Mr. Gilbert, I love your company. I love the opportunity, but come with me to the window. This kid took me to the window. He goes, you see all that parking? I go, yeah. He goes, it's February. He goes, I'm going to park 300 yards over there, and I'm going to walk in this building here. Nice building, great place, great company. I'm going to spend 8, 9, 10 hours, whatever I'm going to. And you could actually see, he goes, see that Max and Irma's over there? I go, yeah. He goes, that's the only place I can eat dinner. He goes, and then see those apartments over there? They're nice, but he goes, I don't want to come here in the morning, walk down asphalt, 300 yards, go there only, go to my apartment and start the whole thing again. I want a city, I want culture, I want diversity, I want thinking, I want happenstance, I want arts, I want this, I want that. And it hit me we're going to be dead here soon if we don't, because you started hearing that before, but this kid really, so he went to Chicago. I couldn't even get him. I thought that's when my sales skills really started to deteriorate. But he changed. He was like the icing on the sort of the cake of, man, we got it. So that's where we really also started getting serious about Detroit. And from day one, and I kid you not, we moved down with 1,400 people. And again, now it's 17,000 plus. Not day 2, not day 3, but day 1, and Detroit was nothing like it is today. It was, you knew. Everybody who came just knew. You couldn't even explain it. It was a feeling, and we've been blessed as it keeps going in the right direction.
Well, we could talk all day. Thank you so much.
Good. Well, thank you.
Thanks for being on stage with us.
Thank you.
We're going to stay with you.
And thank you, Dan. You're a rock star. And both panels today, we've heard rock stars in action. We're going to now break. Lunch is outside.